She ordered sparkling water, no lemon, and didn't touch it. Her eyes kept scanning the cafe like she was afraid to be recognized, like this wasn't a breakup so much as a business meeting she regretted scheduling. Meanwhile, I already knew. When someone rehearses the talk this hard, you can feel it humming under their skin. She finally exhaled and said it, just like she'd practiced in front of her mirror. I need to focus on my career. I can't build something with you right now. No inflection, like reading out loud from a manual on emotional detachment. I remember the exact moment she said it, because that jazz track playing overhead, Bill Evans, I think, hit this dissonant note right as she dropped the line, almost like the universe wanted to laugh in my face. I didn't argue, didn't flinch, just nodded. Understood. It threw her off. She blinked fast, lips parting slightly like she expected the script to go differently. Maybe a protest, a plea, a weak, we can make this work speech. But I just signaled for the check, slid my card across the table, left a generous tip. When I stood up, she looked smaller somehow, like the power she thought she held evaporated the second I agreed. That was the last time she ever saw me. Before I left, I turned around once, not to look at her, but to look at the framed chalkboard behind the counter. Someone had scribbled the quote of the day, "Some bridges burn themselves." I almost laughed. Funny how 97% of people who hear stories like mine never hit subscribe. Maybe because they think they'll never need to hear the ending. But trust me, sometimes the ending is the point. So here's mine. Back then, Rachel thought she was upgrading, trading instability for ambition, love for hustle. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that I wasn't some placeholder waiting for her calendar to clear. I wasn't a footnote in her LinkedIn story arc. I had plans. I just hadn't chosen which fire to feed yet. That night I went home, made a single cup of black coffee and sat down at my desk. Not the one in my bedroom, the one wedged into the corner of my tiny rented living room. I opened a folder I hadn't touched in 2 years. Inside, scribbled diagrams, napkin sketches, a half-melted USB drive. The foundation of something I once believed in but had shelved, because life got busy, because love came first, because comfort had made me soft. Not anymore. I pulled out a spiral-bound notebook and flipped to the inside cover. Her photo was still taped there, smiling, cheek pressed to mine, some rooftop party I barely remember. I studied it for exactly 10 seconds before I slammed the notebook shut and filed it away in the drawer. Then I opened a blank document, titled it The 5-Year War. And make no mistake, that's exactly what it was. Everyone talks about passion like it's loud. It's not. Sometimes passion is quiet, calculated, a long game with no shortcuts. While she posted sunrise grindset quotes on Instagram, I coded until my fingers cramped. While she got promoted, then laterally shifted, then laid off, I built brick by digital brick. And when the silence got too loud, when doubt crept in like mold under drywall, I just pictured that cafe, her untouched water glass, and that line, "I can't build something with you right now." Perfect, because I could, and I would, without her. That was the day I stopped trying to be part of someone else's story and started writing my own, one keystroke at a time. My apartment smelled like scorched takeout and printer toner, one of those studio layouts where the bedroom was technically just the corner furthest from the fridge. The place hadn't been cleaned in weeks, months if I'm being honest, but that night, I didn't notice the mess. I didn't even take off my jacket. I sat down at my desk like I was clocking in, laptop on, 6 tabs open, all of them useless now. One was a discounted getaway I never booked. Another was an article she sent me about building your brand. I closed each tab slowly, methodically, like shutting the lids on 6 little caskets. Then I opened the 7th, the only one that mattered. It was a prototype of something I'd been designing 3 years ago, a modular platform for small-scale logistics companies, helping them track, sync, and dispatch inventory without needing a $50K SAP license. I'd mocked it up in a fever dream back when I still believed in crazy ideas and thought talent was enough. Then life happened, or more specifically, Rachel happened, and I let the draft rot in a digital drawer while I grew up. Now, that blueprint stared back at me like an old friend who'd been waiting patiently, arms crossed, shaking his head. There was a single image embedded on page 1, a photo of me holding a whiteboard marker in front of a tangled mess of circles and arrows, grinning like a lunatic. That version of me was hungry, naive, sure, but unbroken. I stared at that idiot for a long time. Then I got to work. At some point, I pulled out the black notebook I used to call my 5-year plan. I hadn't cracked it open in years. Inside the cover was a photo of Rachel, She'd given it to me on our anniversary, back when we still believed in each other. I stared at her face for a few seconds too long. Then, like ripping off a bandage, I slammed it shut and shoved the whole thing into a drawer. This wasn't about her anymore. It never really was. My fridge held half a bottle of mustard, 2 expired yogurts, and a 6-pack of cheap beer. I opened one, toasted no one, and started laying the first stones. A fresh repo, blank lines of code, a Google sheet titled, Investors' Real Maybe Pipe Dreams. The first entry, me. I wish I could say it all poured out effortlessly. It didn't. That first week was hell. I forgot to eat, slept in 3-hour shifts. My neck spasmed from sitting wrong, my hands shook. At one point, I hallucinated my old boss's voice yelling at me to cut scope or get serious. So I cut scope, got serious, and then some. My neighbor must have thought I was running a tech cult. I had flowcharts taped to the walls, dry erase markers running dry, post-it notes layered like sediment on every surface. I wore the same hoodie for 6 days straight. I talked to myself, loudly. Passion makes you weird. I also learned fast. Hard lessons. 1. Friends stop texting back when all you talk about is code and cloud credits. 2. No one invests in someone still figuring it out. 3. When you're broke and driven, people think you're unstable. But I didn't care. Because while Rachel was moving up through another brand strategy role in another glass box somewhere downtown, I was crawling through digital mud, teaching myself UI design at 3 a.m. debugging back-end crashes on borrowed bandwidth, eating raw oats with peanut butter because groceries were a luxury. And yet, every single day, I moved forward. By an inch or a mile didn't matter. The more I built, the less she haunted me. Not because I forgot her, but because she became irrelevant. My motivation mutated. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't proving her wrong. It was proving me right. I still remember the first time my alpha build didn't crash. The loading spinner appeared. The dashboard opened. 4 modules worked. It was ugly, slow, but functional. I stared at it like a father seeing his kid walk for the first time. Then I opened the window, screamed something triumphant and probably unhinged into the night, and passed out face down on the keyboard. By the time I woke up, the mark of the space bar was imprinted on my cheek. I took a photo of it, labeled the folder Day 0. Everything after that was just scaffolding. Days became weeks. Weeks became pitch decks. Rejections piled up like laundry. But occasionally someone replied, a friend of a friend who'd tried a demo, a guy who knew a guy, a maybe. The platform began to breathe. I didn't celebrate, didn't post on socials, didn't text her. I just built. There's a certain silence that settles in when your phone stops buzzing. At first, it's subtle. Missed calls that don't get repeated, group chats you stop replying to, Friday night plans that stop being offered. Then one day you look up and no one's there. No pings, no texts, no distractions. Just you, the glow of your monitor, and a bowl of overcooked ramen cooling beside your elbow. That was year 2. My circle used to be decent. 5 or 6 guys from college, a few coworkers, cousins who'd swing by on Sundays. Slowly, they drifted. The first time I turned down a camping trip, it was, we'll plan another one. The third time, no invite. And I understood. I wasn't showing up, not in any real sense. Every interaction felt like a delay, like I was stealing time from something bigger. I told myself I was choosing greatness, but some nights it felt like I was just choosing solitude with better lighting. My mom left 2 voicemails that year, long, worried ones. You sound tired, sweetheart. Are you eating? Call me back. I didn't. I couldn't. Explaining that I was wiring $700 to a Ukrainian back-end dev while eating expired cereal doesn't sound like progress to someone who thinks success wears a tie and comes with health insurance. And then came the first crack in the foundation. Aaron, my co-founder. He was the talker, the one who could charm investors and squeeze 3 meetings out of 1 lunch. We were yin and yang, me the builder, him the closer. But somewhere between our second prototype and our 10th unpaid pitch, Aaron lost steam. Or maybe he just saw the writing on the wall and didn't like the font. I just don't think this is scalable, he said one night, nursing a beer while I was halfway through a code sprint. We've been grinding for 2 years, Mike. 2 years, and we're still duct taping features together like interns. I didn't argue. I just saved my file and said, then go. He blinked. That's it? Yeah, that's it. He left the next morning, took his backpack, his charm, and the half-broken Keurig he bought on a whim, left me with 3 months of unpaid bills, an unfinished front end, and a pitch deck that still had both our faces on slide 4. So I removed his. I redesigned the UI myself, taught myself enough React to limp through basic features, pitched alone, slept less, ate worse. I was losing weight and gaining clarity. Every investor who ghosted me became another notch on a mental wall. Every email that began with, "We love what you're doing," but became firewood. And then, somehow, miraculously, we landed a pilot client, a niche freight brokerage firm in Iowa of all places. Small contract, small scope, but it paid. Paid enough to clear rent, enough to keep the lights on, enough to show other investors that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a pipe dream after all. Seed funding came 2 months later, 50 grand. Not from some firm in a glass tower, but from a guy I met on Reddit who sold his crypto at the right time and wanted to diversify. I didn't celebrate. I rebuilt the server architecture and answered 112 support tickets that week. Some came at 3 a.m., I replied in minutes. People assumed we had a team. I never corrected them. I didn't date. I didn't flirt. I couldn't imagine making small talk with someone over drinks while my AWS bill hovered over my head like a guillotine. Instead, I built routines. Woke up at 6, worked until 9, passed out with my laptop still humming. I learned to sleep in cycles, 2 hours here, 3 hours there. Drank enough coffee to damage internal organs. I forgot birthdays, missed weddings, couldn't remember the last movie I watched in full. I did, however, memorize every error message my codebase could possibly spit out. And still, I wasn't done. The platform evolved, from basic dashboards to predictive tracking, from 1 client to 3, then 5, then 12. A shipping company in Ohio started using it to reroute trucks in real time. A boutique logistics firm in Texas said we helped them shave 14% off delivery costs. They never knew I was running this from a $600 laptop on a wobbly IKEA desk. I hired 2 remote devs, gave them aliases, made the company look bigger than it was, built out a roadmap and stuck to it. Every delay was a puzzle, every setback was a dare. I became someone else during those years, not colder, but sharper, leaner, not cruel, but unsparing. Sometimes I'd lie awake at night, eyes burning, wondering if she ever thought about me, wondering if she assumed I'd faded, fizzled out, settled. She had no idea, because while she was chasing promotions in offices built by other men, I was pouring concrete into my own foundation, brick by goddamn brick, and she'd never see a single one, not until it was too late. The article hit on a Tuesday. I remember because it was the only day that week I showered before 10 a.m. I was on my second coffee skimming through unread Slack threads when Maya, our operations lead, burst into my office grinning like she'd won a prize. She didn't knock, didn't hesitate, just tossed a rolled-up magazine onto my desk and said, "Page 32. I frowned. Since when do we care about print? Since TechWest Monthly decided we were the future of adaptive supply chain architecture. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Page 32, glossy, 4 columns, a full-page spread. The headline read, "The Invisible Architects of Modern Logistics." It was one of those features that tries to sound poetic but ends up slightly offbeat. Still, the content was solid. Stats, use cases, a timeline of the evolution of regional freight platforms, and nestled in paragraph 6, a platform used quietly by over a dozen mid-sized logistics networks, reputed for its precision and near-flawless uptime. Sources say the company was bootstrapped, survived the 2020 downturn, and now handles over 4 million data points per day. No names, no quotes, no photos. But those who knew, knew. My inbox lit up like a Christmas tree. Old clients, a few angel investors who passed years ago suddenly just checking in. Even my ex-coworker from the consulting firm I quit a decade ago sent a LinkedIn message that just read, "Knew you'd pull it off. Proud of you, man." I ignored most of it. Pride doesn't need applause. But there was one ping I couldn't help but notice. It was from Jonah, Rachel's friend. Well, our friend back then, before the cafe breakup, before the disappearances. He texted, "Yo, saw this and thought of you. Also, heads up, I sent it to Rachel. She didn't know. Her face. Dude." Attached. A photo of the article circled in red Sharpie, followed by another message. She asked if it was really your company. I just said, "Look it up." I set my phone down. Didn't reply. I could picture it, though. The moment it hit her, the name of the platform maybe, or a line about a silent co-founder turned solo architect. Maybe she squinted at the word bootstrapped. She always said I lacked follow-through, that I overthought everything, that I didn't know how to go all in. Apparently, she was wrong. I heard from Jonah a week later. We were scheduled for a Zoom catch-up, mostly networking, partly nostalgia. Somewhere near the end of the call, he paused, leaned back, and smirked. "You know she's spiraling a little, right?" I sipped my drink. "She always does. She's been job hopping, Marketing to branding to, get this, UX strategy. Keeps trying to reinvent herself but never sticks long enough to climb. And? And she brought you up. Said she saw the article. Said she couldn't believe how far you'd come. Asked if you'd, ever said anything about her. I laughed. A single, dry, empty sound. Jonah raised an eyebrow. So that's a no? That's a nothing. He nodded slowly. Yeah, that's what I figured. Apparently, she had no clue I'd spent the last 6 years turning silence into a fortress. That I'd scrubbed my social presence, rerouted my personal domain, kept my name off the masthead on purpose. We had a policy at the company. No vanity. We didn't plaster our faces across every blog post or brag on panels. Let the product speak. Let the results roar. Meanwhile, Rachel was still out there hoping hashtags could double as resumes. She'd bounced between startups and agencies like a bird panicked in a glass room, fluttering, frantic, and unsure where the exit was. A rebrand here, a strategic role there, always with a new bio. Storyteller, creative catalyst, brand whisperer, the kind of titles people invent when they're not sure what they actually do. One night, months later, I checked her LinkedIn, morbid curiosity maybe. She'd updated her profile banner to a quote that read, "Success is a journey, not a destination," which is the sort of thing people post when they're standing very still and trying to convince themselves otherwise. The mutual connections were still there. 28 shared, some from the past, a few from the present. One of them even worked for me now, technically. A content writer on a freelance contract. Doubt she knew the history, but that was fine. I never wanted to block Rachel out. I wanted her to see what she walked away from, see what I built without her, see how the thing she said I was too distracted to do became the only thing I ever did. I wanted her to scroll one night, wine in hand, and realize the one man she dismissed had quietly outgrown her entire world. And the best part? She still had no idea just how close she was to becoming part of it again. The glow of Rachel's phone lit up the ceiling like a dim searchlight as she lay flat on her back, one hand under her head, the other swiping through names she hadn't thought about in years. Her apartment was still. Not quiet. Still. The kind of still that grows in rooms where no one talks anymore. A half-finished glass of wine stood on the coffee table. Her TV flashed the Netflix home screen, untouched for an hour. She was supposed to be job hunting. Instead, she was memory hunting. The scrolling was lazy at first, habitual. Colleagues from her first agency, a few men she dated between promotions, college roommates, people who had all since folded into the vague category of used to matter. Then she saw his name, Michael, just the first name, no emoji, no label, no do not text note. She never needed one. After that day in the cafe, they simply drifted into radio silence like astronauts floating off in opposite directions, untethered. She stared at the contact for a long moment. Her thumb hovered over it like it was a hot burner. Tap to text, to call. She couldn't even remember what she would say. Hey, stranger, saw something in a magazine? Was that you? It all sounded absurd. So instead, she minimized the Contacts app and opened her browser. Michael Barrett Logistics Platform. Her search results blinked back at her like a dare. No social media, no LinkedIn profile, no Medium blogs, no personal rants on X, just a sparse corporate landing page, clean, precise, logo in grayscale, tagline, efficiency, delivered. That was it. She clicked through the site. Nothing told her who was behind it. No team photos, no founder story, not even a Meet Our CEO page. Just product specs, case studies, and a press kit that required approval to access. He had built a fortress and sealed every door she might have walked through. And yet, as she navigated each page, her chest tightened. It wasn't the success that unnerved her. It was the absence, the way he had removed himself so completely. She hadn't even realized it had happened. One minute, he was the guy scribbling ideas on napkins while she prepped for a pitch. The next, he was vapor. And she felt it. Not the envy, not yet, but the static. The quiet discomfort that comes from knowing someone didn't just move on. They moved past. She searched deeper. Reverse image searches, archive.org snapshots, trying to find traces of him like a digital archaeologist brushing sand off forgotten bones. Nothing. Until she stumbled across one photo, a blurry candid taken at a logistics conference. She wouldn't have recognized him if it weren't for the caption. Michael Barrett, founder of... She stopped reading, focused on the image. He was older, sharper, leaner. The hoodie was gone, replaced by a tailored blazer, hair shorter, smile tighter. He looked contained, like a man who no longer needed to prove anything to anyone, least of all her. She didn't realize how long she stared at that photo until her phone dimmed. Suddenly the wine tasted sour. The silence of the apartment stretched out again, a reminder. She had no one to tell about this. Not really. Her current team at the agency wouldn't care. Her last boss barely remembered her name. Her friends? Most had migrated toward husbands, babies, and Instagram captions about balance. She was 39, unmarried, and renting a one-bedroom 3 flights up from a dry cleaner that never opened on time. Her resume was bloated with 3-month gigs and job titles that sounded more aspirational than functional. Strategic lead, innovation officer. She had talked her way into boardrooms and then right back out of them. And now, her thumb was trembling over the name of the one man who never chased noise, who just built. She put the phone down, not because she didn't want to call, because she knew he wouldn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was a finished sentence, a conclusion she had left unfinished 10 years ago and now couldn't rewrite. And for the first time, really, for the first real time, she wondered what would have happened if she'd said something different in that cafe. Not, I need to focus on my career, but maybe, let's build something together. But the moment was gone. And Michael? He was already halfway to his next one. The elevator doors slid open with that sterile ding Rachel had come to dread. Another beige lobby, another sterile office, another attempt at pretending like she still belonged in the room. Her blazer was one she hadn't worn in years. The shoulders sat stiff, slightly too broad, too corporate. She hoped it looked intentional. She stepped out into the reception area and glanced around. Minimalist, classy, clean, matte surfaces with no fingerprints, and a glass-walled view of a bullpen full of focused people. Everyone looked too young to be tired and too old to be unsure. It felt stable, which made her instantly suspicious. She approached the desk. The receptionist looked up and smiled with the effortless polish of someone who didn't need to fake it. "Hi, I'm Rachel Green. I have a 2 p.m. with, She checked the email on her phone again, pretending she hadn't rehearsed the name 10 times in the Uber ride over. "With a hiring manager for the strategic ops role." The receptionist tapped something, then nodded. "Yes, you're here to meet with Mr. Barrett. He'll be right with you." Rachel's lips parted slightly. "Sorry, who?" "Mr. Barrett," the woman repeated, smiling. "You can have a seat right over there." Rachel turned slowly, moving toward the waiting area like she was sleepwalking. Mr. Barrett. Her heart did something strange in her chest, tightened, fluttered, dropped. That name, but it couldn't be, couldn't possibly be him. She hadn't said the name out loud in nearly a decade, hadn't even heard it spoken in any professional context since Jonah's messages. Still, the coincidence tugged at something primal in her. She sat down in the leather chair, hands folded neatly in her lap, trying to breathe normally. She could feel her pulse in her neck, in her wrists, in her teeth. What were the odds? Common last name, definitely not him. Don't be stupid. She pulled out her phone, checked the email again. No full name, no signature, just the corporate address and the phrase, "We were impressed with your background." Her background. She almost laughed out loud. The truth was, her background was a patchwork of collapses. The last startup she'd joined folded after 12 months. The one before that downsized her entire team when they lost Series B. Somewhere along the line, she'd gone from candidate to cautionary tale. Now she was sitting here praying for middle-tier stability at a firm she hadn't even properly Googled. The receptionist's phone buzzed. She picked up, nodded once, then looked over. "Miss Green, he's ready for you now." Rachel stood, knees tighter than expected. She followed the receptionist down a glass corridor lined with black and white portraits of, what, executives? Clients? She didn't recognize anyone, which somehow made the pressure worse. The building didn't scream tech or logistics or even finance. It screamed control, which felt alien to her now. They stopped in front of a sleek glass door. The receptionist smiled again, too brightly. "He's just inside." Rachel opened the door and froze. There he was, standing by the window, back straight, suit crisp, profile unmistakable. Michael. He turned slowly, casual, composed, not at all surprised. His face was older, sure, sharper, but the eyes were the same, calm, cold, focused. "Rachel," he said, just her name. No smile, no warmth, just a recognition so firm it might as well have been a gavel. She blinked, standing half in, half out of the room, like her body hadn't caught up to her brain yet. "Michael, wow, I didn't." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please." She stepped in and sat, hands clenching her bag like it might anchor her to the moment. "I didn't realize this is your company?" He didn't answer right away, just watched her for a second too long. Then he turned back toward his desk, picked up a tablet, and swiped it on. "We've grown," he said simply. "So we're bringing in new people, fresh perspectives." Rachel nodded slowly, heartbeat crawling up her throat. I'm honestly a little. I didn't expect this." "You didn't expect a lot of things." That landed like a slap, but not one he threw in anger. It was clinical, observational. She opened her mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. He glanced at her resume on the screen. "You've been around." She flinched, not visibly but internally. He hadn't said it cruelly, just as a statement of fact, like her career was a breadcrumb trail of missed turns, and he was just tracing the path out loud. "Yes," she said, trying to steady her voice. "The last few years have been unpredictable." He nodded, still not smiling. "Ours too, but we pivoted." She couldn't tell if it was a jab or just data. Either way, the implication was clear. "We grew. You wandered." Michael set the tablet down, folded his hands. "You're here because someone on the team flagged your file. The role's open. We're considering several candidates." She nodded. "Of course." Silence filled the room for a long beat. She suddenly hated how quiet it was. No ticking clock, no background noise, just this unbearable stillness where he controlled every inch of air. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to act. All she could think was, what does he want? Or worse, what does he already know? And the scariest part? She realized in that moment that he might have planned this. Maybe not 10 years ago, but now he knew she'd walk through this door, and he was ready. She took the chair he offered like it might dissolve beneath her, sat straight, ankles crossed, palms flat against her thighs to stop them from shaking. It felt like theater, some half-remembered rehearsal of a job interview, but all the lines were wrong. The stage was his, the spotlight inescapable. Michael sat across from her with a stillness that unnerved her more than any confrontation could have. No twitch of irritation, no flicker of smugness, just that same centered, measured presence she vaguely remembered from a lifetime ago. Only now it was wrapped in tailored charcoal wool and corporate silence. "Rachel," he said again, softer this time, like testing the weight of it. "Long time." "Yeah," she replied quickly, too quickly. "It really is. I didn't expect." He raised an eyebrow but didn't help her finish, just let the awkward sentence hang there, airless. She cleared her throat. "I didn't know this was your company." He nodded once. "Not many do." Her eyes flicked toward the glass wall behind him, a row of sleek desks, busy people, headsets, coffee cups, efficiency in motion. No one glanced in their direction, but she suddenly felt watched, or worse, measured. "I mean, it makes sense," she added, fumbling. "You were always good at building things, ideas, systems." "You didn't think it would scale," he said, matter of fact. Her throat tightened. "I don't think I said that." "You didn't have to." She nodded slowly, took the hit. No protest. Not here. He leaned forward, interlaced his fingers on the desk. "You're here for strategic ops?" "That's right." "Do you even know what we do here?" She opened her mouth, then paused. The truth was, not really. She'd skimmed the company page between panic attacks and sent the application at 2 a.m. after her last freelance client ghosted her invoice. "I did some reading," she lied. He tilted his head slightly, amused but not smiling. "We optimize logistics workflows, cut waste, predict patterns, nothing flashy, but it saves companies millions." It sounds impressive. It's not, it's consistent. She exhaled slowly, nodding, trying to recover some footing. "Well, if the role's still open, I'd love a chance to." Michael stood abruptly, walking over to the glass wall behind her. He gestured toward the bustling team. "There already is." She turned to look. Past the reflection of her nervous face, a dozen people were locked into their tasks, confident, moving with purpose, the kind of team she hadn't been part of in years. He continued, "We always have room for people who can adapt, think, deliver. Titles are irrelevant here. Value isn't." She turned back to face him, confused. "Are you offering me something?" "I'm offering the same thing everyone gets, a role, entry point. You earn everything else." It wasn't condescension. It wasn't even cruelty. It was policy. She hesitated. "That's fair." Michael watched her, not coldly, just patiently, like a man who didn't need to rush anything because the board was already set. "I'll warn you," he added, returning to his seat. "It's demanding. There's no hand-holding, no catch-up. You're either part of the system or you slow it down." "I don't slow down," she said, too quickly again. His eyes flicked toward her bag, A designer piece 2 seasons out of date, corners fraying. Then to her resume folder, crisp but thin. I'm sure you don't. The pause that followed felt calibrated, not awkward, intentional. She broke it. What would I be doing? In the role? Internal ops, some account coordination, reporting, depends where you fit. Rachel swallowed. It wasn't glamorous, not leadership, not strategic, but it was inside. And more importantly, it was his world, his game. I'm willing to prove myself, she said. He didn't nod, didn't affirm, just let her sit with the words. Then finally, you'll start Monday. Your desk will be in Bay 2. She blinked. Wait, seriously? Of course. He stood again, offering his hand. She rose, hesitant, and shook it. His grip was firm, unreadable. Welcome aboard, he said. And that was it. She walked out of the office, not triumphant, not relieved, just disoriented. A strange cocktail of gratitude and dread clinging to her ribs. Something about the way he'd looked at her, like she wasn't new, like she'd already been part of this story and not in the way she wanted. As she passed the receptionist's desk, the woman looked up. You're all set? I think so, Rachel said. But she wasn't sure of anything, only that he was sure. Too sure. The badge clipped to her blazer felt heavier than it should have. It beeped her through the frosted glass security doors each morning at 8:57, 3 minutes early, because lateness here didn't mean reprimand, it meant erasure. No one said it out loud, but she could feel it. Rachel's desk was wedged between a tall filing cabinet and the communal printer. Her monitor was slightly crooked, the office chair had a limp armrest, and the overhead light flickered once every hour like a nervous tick. No one offered to fix it. No one even acknowledged it. The role? Technically, she was part of internal ops. Realistically, she was a glorified utility player, updating vendor contact sheets, cross-checking shipping manifests, triple-proofing calendars that already had someone else proofing them. The assignments were always slightly off. No job title matched her tasks. No 2 requests came from the same person. Sometimes she was asked to dig through 6-month-old analytics reports. Other times, she was asked to just sit in on logistics meetings she didn't understand, with no expectation to speak or even take notes. But she did. She took notes obsessively, because she needed this job. Her checking account was circling the drain. The rent grace period was up. The insurance lapse notice sat unopened on her counter at home. She hadn't told anyone about the job, not yet, not until it felt stable. So she stayed late, every night. After everyone logged off Slack, after the hall lights dimmed, she kept working, or trying to, organizing files, rewriting SOPs no one asked her to touch, highlighting inconsistencies, hoping someone would notice. Michael didn't, not directly. He passed her desk maybe twice a week. A nod, a glance, nothing more. Never unkind, never engaged. It drove her insane. One Thursday night, alone in the office after 10 p.m., she was searching for archived project logs in the shared drive when she stumbled across a folder she hadn't seen before. It was buried under 6 layers of directories, operations, reorg, proposals, temp, final 2, internal candidates. Her name was on one of the PDFs. She hesitated, then clicked. It opened an old org chart, dated 6 months prior, back when she'd still been freelancing. The company's leadership was listed at the top. Michael, Maya, dev leads, sales, and then, on the 3rd tier down, off to the side, her name, Rachel Green, Strategic Ops Support, Provisional. Her title was typed cleanly. Next to it, in a different font, a red comment bubble, Monitor Integration Timeline, Prep Test Assignment, Assess for Long-Term Alignment, circled, in blue. She sat back in her chair, heart thudding. 6 months ago, before her application, before the email, before the interview. She wasn't hired because of her resume. She wasn't chosen from a stack. She'd been preloaded, pre-selected, watched. Suddenly, everything tasted different. Every task, every awkward moment, every vague email. The job wasn't disorganized, it was designed. And she wasn't being assessed on performance. She was being watched for something else entirely. She started retracing in her mind. How did they know she'd apply? How did her file even end up in their system before she reached out? Then a colder thought hit her. She didn't reach out. They did. The email had come from HR@vectorlogic.com. Generic. She hadn't questioned it. She was desperate. And desperate people don't look too hard at olive branches. But it wasn't an olive branch. It was bait. She closed the file, stared blankly at the monitor. All the late nights, all the anxious overperformance, none of it mattered, because this wasn't about skill. This was personal. Somewhere deep in this building, Michael had drawn a circle around her name long before she walked through the door. And suddenly, She didn't know whether she was employed or enlisted. They called it a town hall, but it felt more like Judgment Day. Every department squeezed into the main floor auditorium, rows of identical gray chairs, soft overhead lighting, a giant screen projected behind the stage with the words Leadership Track 2.0 in all caps, like a rebrand could make people forget the pressure. Rachel sat 2/3 from the front, not far enough to hide, not close enough to pretend she belonged. Her fingers were clenched tight around the pen in her lap, though she wasn't sure why she brought it. No one ever asked her to take notes anymore. The murmurs around her were excited, whispers of promotions, bonuses, department shifts. People speculated who might be getting bumped up, who was on the list. She recognized most of the faces. A few she'd helped on board. Some had started after her but moved up faster, much faster. Michael stepped on stage right at 9 a.m. sharp. No fanfare, no grand entrance, just him, confident, still, microphone in hand, suit precise, posture like steel. "Good morning," he said. The room quieted instantly. "I want to talk about trajectory, about resilience, about value." The slideshow began behind him. Portraits of team leads, testimonials from clients, graphs, all the metrics that proved what this company was doing mattered. Then came the part Rachel didn't expect, a spotlight reel. Faces flashed across the screen, employees who had come up through the bottom ranks, learned, adapted, grown into leaders. One woman had started in data entry. Now she was heading partnerships. A guy from custodial was now in IT support. Story after story of people who'd come from nothing and earned everything. Applause followed each one. The room buzzed with hope. Rachel sat straighter. "Maybe?" Michael stepped forward. "These are the people who remind us what's possible," he said. "And now, I want to share a different kind of story." The room fell quiet again. 10 years ago, I was sitting in a cafe with someone I thought I'd build a life with. I had plans, a 5-year roadmap, a shared vision, but she looked at me right across the table and said, "I need to focus on my career. I can't build something with you right now." Rachel froze. Her mouth went dry. The blood drained from her hands. Michael continued, eyes scanning the crowd but never settling. "So I did the only logical thing," he said. "I stopped building with someone else and started building alone." A soft chuckle from somewhere in the crowd. They didn't get it. They thought it was just a metaphor. "But something strange happened along the way," he went on. "The silence, the solitude, it didn't break me. It clarified everything. I realized some people walk away because they're scared, some because they don't believe, and some," he paused, "some just assume you'll stay small forever." He took a breath, calm, still no anger, not even bitterness, just facts. "And now, I believe in giving second chances, not to those who ask for them." His eyes flicked, briefly, intentionally toward Rachel, then away. "But to those who earn them." Silence, then applause, heavy, echoing, whole rows of people clapping like they'd just heard a TED Talk. A few even whistled. Somewhere behind her, someone murmured, "Damn, that's powerful." Rachel didn't clap, couldn't. Her skin burned. She wasn't the inspiration. She was the cautionary tale. He'd wrapped her story in metaphor, packaged it as a leadership lesson, and served it to the entire company. They didn't know who it was about, but she did. She was a fable now, a line in a keynote, a private warning dressed as public wisdom. Michael clicked to the final slide. "Leadership is earned." The room stood to clap again. He nodded, modest, then stepped down from the stage and walked off. Not once did he look back at her. Not once did he smile. And in that moment, it hit her. She hadn't been hired to rise. She'd been hired to witness. The door to his office was slightly ajar, as if expecting her. Rachel paused in the threshold, knuckles hovering, but he didn't look up. Just kept tapping a stylus against the corner of his tablet like he hadn't dropped a bomb on her entire existence hours earlier. The hum of the office beyond the glass walls felt miles away. She stepped in. "Do you have a minute?" Her voice cracked on the word minute. He finally looked up, calm, measured, like the man from the stage never left. "For you?" he said. "Of course." She closed the door behind her. It clicked a little too loud. Rachel stood across from his desk, didn't sit. "You planned this." Not a question, just the air leaving her lungs in the shape of disbelief. Michael leaned back in his chair, watching her the way one might watch a clock finally reach the hour. "Planned what exactly?" "This," she said, motioning vaguely at the room, at him, at herself. "The job, the invite, the presentation. You knew I'd see it." "I hoped you would," he said simply. Her jaw clenched. Why? He tilted his head. You asked for a job. She faltered. And you said, I already had one. He nodded, then stood. In silence, he walked to the far wall, an understated gallery of frames. Not the usual corporate brag wall, no diplomas, no photos with clients, just a few artifacts, almost artfully chosen. He tapped the glass of one. Framed behind it, her employee badge, laminated, standard issue. Beside it, neatly mounted on black velvet, a torn scrap of notebook paper, familiar handwriting, familiar ink. I need to focus on my career. Rachel stared at it, recognition flooding like cold water down her spine. It was hers. She remembered now how she scribbled the line on the back of a receipt the day they split, trying to make herself feel principled instead of panicked. She must have left it in the cafe. He kept it. He turned to her, voice low but steady. You did, he said. So did I. She couldn't speak. He moved past her, heading back to his desk. Not dismissive, just done. As she stood frozen, staring at the note, something in her sank. Not rage, not sorrow, recognition. She hadn't been erased. She hadn't been punished. She'd been outpaced. He didn't trap her. He simply waited. She turned to go. Her reflection in the glass door caught her for a second. Older, smaller, off-center in a room she didn't own. Behind her, Michael sat down, already typing. And this time, she didn't ask him anything, because the story had already ended, exactly where it began. Only now, the pen was in his hand.